Welcome to the very first episode of Ryan Reviews. This week, I'm going to review the highly anticipated Wakanda Forever, the sequel to 2018's Black Panther, and the most recent entry into the MCU. So very light spoilers until I get to my final thoughts, but I'll be sure to give a warning. For my reviews, I'm going to base it on 5 categories at 2 points each, adding up to 10, with an option for bonus points at my discretion. So let's get to the review. So first up is story. For story, I gave Wakanda Forever a 1.25 out of 2. I think Ryan Coogler had an incredibly difficult task with this story. In the wake of Chadwick Boseman's tragic death, he had to write a story that worked as a tribute to Boseman and T'Challa in a way that was sincere and moving without being distasteful. At the same time, he had to tell a story that stood on its own and at some level would be able to distance itself from his death. Overall, I think he did an excellent job with the story. It moved well and never felt like it was 2 hours and 40 minutes. I liked that it was self-contained and that it didn't feel bogged down by other MCU properties, characters, or the current multiverse. I really liked how they were able to work in Namor and Talokan into the story and connect them to Wakanda in a way that felt real. Also, much like they did in the first, Wakanda Forever gives us a villain who just might be right. He's witnessed the effects of colonialism, sees where things are headed, and wants to strike first. He has a legitimate point. What stops me from giving it a better score is that it felt a bit disjointed. While the story never drags, it does at times struggle with the amount of things it's trying to do, handling real life and fictitious death, introducing completely new culture, new characters, geopolitics. There's a lot going on, and it doesn't quite knock it out the park. So next is audiovisual. Audiovisual gets a 2 from me. I think the biggest complaint of Black Panther was the CGI, especially in the third act. I think the team working on Wakanda Forever must have taken that to heart because the film looks great throughout. I loved everything about how it was shot. Wakanda's beautiful and fully realized, just like the first film. The costumes look fantastic. The underwater scenes look great. They're not overly stylized or unrealistic. Talokan looks like a real place. I really love the design for Namor. Somehow they were able to make ankle wings work, and it didn't look ridiculous. I also liked the sound design. I thought it was really well done. There was some really cool stuff done with the Talokani when they go to battle, which I won't give away if you haven't seen this movie yet. But it really worked. The sound design was great, and I also loved the score. Just like the first, the score was really good with a combination of some contemporary songs along with the score specifically for the movie. I think it worked really, really well. Next up are the performances. So the performances also get a 2 from me. This is truly an ensemble, and everyone is really giving their best. As many have pointed out, this film has several strong female characters, but it never feels like it's beating you over the head with it, or looking for praise because of that fact. They're just simply several well-written, complex female characters, led by Angela Bassett, who deserves an Oscar nomination for her performance as Ramonda. The other standout in this movie is Tenoch Huerta as Namor. He has a commanding presence throughout and presents a worthy adversary, both in his performance and his motivations. I also love Winston Duke, who's back as M'Baku, and I hope that he gets his own show because he's just great whenever he's on the screen. But top to bottom, the movie is rounded out by fantastic performances, including Lupita Nyong'o, who I again wish we had more of, Danai Gurira, Dominique Thorne's Riri Williams is also really great. It felt a little slightly shoehorned prior to her Disney Plus show, but she's still great and makes me excited to see her show. The emotional core of the film is Letitia Wright's Shuri, and she's the one who really goes through the most change throughout. I think she's great, and my only nitpick is that I don't know that she quite rises to the level of Angela Bassett and Huerta, but that's not really a knock on her. It's just how fantastic some of the other performances were, and I think, again, she still held her own and really was the emotional core to this film. Next up is internal logic and consistency, which I'm giving a 1. So as I mentioned before, this movie had a lot to manage, so I do give credit for being able to keep things somewhat together. That being said, I have a couple of issues with the movie. First, Wakanda feels weak. I get that they're going up against an unknown enemy with unknown powers, but for the most technologically advanced nation in the world, they felt kind of weak and defenseless at times. Second, while I understand Namor's motivations, Some of his choices don't make sense. In his initial meeting with the Wakandans, he gives a weird ultimatum that doesn't quite work for me and feels shoehorned in order for them to get from point A to point B. Finally, when we get to the Act 3 battle, I was completely confused by the choice that the Wakandans make as far as how to engage. It seemed like they unnecessarily put themselves at risk, and so just with those things, it just kept me from giving the internal logic and consistency a better score. So again, I give it a 1. Finally, the feels. I definitely give this a 2 for feels. The movie included really several touching tributes to Chadwick Boseman, and his presence is felt throughout the film without feeling overwhelming. There were also several moving moments throughout that range from grief to sadness to triumph. And while I feel like the movie stumbles a bit with the pacing, I think it really nails it with the emotion when it has to. And we get a movie that, despite any problems, won't fail to move you at several moments. So overall, I give Wakanda Forever an 8.25 out of 10. Some of the highlights, again, are the performances, specifically Angela Bassett, Tenoch Huerta, and Winston Duke. I think it honors Chadwick Boseman in a way that was nearly impossible to do well, and they really nailed that part of the movie. And I found the movie was exciting throughout. Some of the lowlights for me, the logic at times was a little sketchy and felt like they were just doing things to get from point A to point B, and it felt a little disjointed. So my MVP of the movie is definitely Angela Bassett as Queen Ramonda. She's not in the film as much as some other characters, but when she's there, I mean, she's just a presence like no other. And rarely do we get performances in these kinds of movies that are really worthy of Oscar nominations. But if she doesn't get an Oscar nomination, it's a travesty. So now we get to spoiler territory. So definitely, if you haven't seen the movie, which, what are you doing? It's been out a couple weeks now. Definitely go see it. Now I'm going to talk a little bit of spoilers. So I'm going to give my favorite moments of the movie. So my 3 favorite moments. First is the opening credits. I think the opening credits paid a really touching tribute to Chadwick Boseman. You typically get the Marvel logo and shots from different movies, and they really just focused on Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa. And it was really moving, and one of several throughout the movie, but it really worked. They did it with silent, and you could feel people sniffling. The only negative maybe is that you just realize just how much he embodied that character and how much he'd be missed in this film, and just shoes that would be almost impossible to fill. But it was a really touching tribute. My second favorite moment in the movie was Queen Ramonda protecting Riri, and as such sacrificing herself. One of the more emotional moments in the movie was her death, and in that she was again commanding and showed her instinct to protect. And I think it was a really touching moment, unexpected, and that's something that really helped to elevate Shuri's character. Question her ability to kind of forgive Namor so quickly after that, but it was a moving moment, and one of the I want to say favorite moments of the movie, I guess, but one of the more moving moments throughout the movie. And then my third favorite moment would be from the mid-credit scene. We get Nakia, who throughout we thought just kind of left Wakanda and disappeared for 6 years, but reality was that she had a kid with T'Challa, and kept him in Haiti to protect him. And so that was just a shocking moment that was completely unexpected for me. I think there were probably seeds planted throughout, and my wife mentioned at some point that she thought that might be the case, but completely went over my head. So it was really a shock to me that when it happened, and I think it allows for a T'Challa in this universe without having to recast. So I think it was a smart move, and gives them opportunities to do some things down the road where we do get another King T'Challa, again, without having to recast the one that we had. Wakanda Forever will always be compared to Black Panther. And in a way, it's difficult to compare the two. Where Black Panther was a celebration, Wakanda Forever feels like a film about grief and loss and figuring out how to cope with it. Real-life tragedy permeates the film, but it never feels gratuitous or distasteful, instead making this feel like nothing we've seen in the MCU. I was on the edge of my seat throughout, And I do think that Ryan Coogler did a great job of managing everything and telling a cohesive story. That being said, I think the movie does struggle under its own weight at times and felt a bit disjointed as a result. Logic aside, we get a thrilling third act that looks great and gives us a resolution that I'm not sure we've seen before in the MCU. We end up with a great movie and a worthy successor to Black Panther.